Okay, I think it's 7:30 now, Israel time, Jerusalem time. So I'm going to first of all thank Mordechai and Raya for hosting this great miniature Kinus Shluchim conference, and of course to Rabbi Levi Diamond for coming up with a great idea and putting everything together. Thank you very, very much. And this whole idea of the Kinus Shluchim, I'm sure many of you for several years have been seeing the large picture of Shluchim. And I was just telling someone last week that I hope it's not something of the past, but B'ezrat Hashem, very soon, Hashem will take away the terrible virus in the world, and we'll be able to once again have the wonderful picture and many other pictures and congregations from many of our friends from around the world, especially here in Eretz Yisrael. But in the meantime, some of you may have heard of the longest Zoom Farbrengen in the world, a record, a full week from Motzai Shabbat in Australia till the entrance of Shabbat in Hawaii. And so I'm sure that many of us who wonder what exactly is the Kinus HaShluchim about, what does it mean that Shluchim come together, what exactly do they do in New York at the Rebbe's Shul, the Rebbe's Ohel, and how it was before the Rebbe's passing. And so in a nutshell, just to give you a short anecdote, and that is that the fact that the Shluchim come together and we do Farbrengens together, and before the Rebbe's passing, the highlight was in the Rebbe's Farbrengen, the Rebbe would dedicate a Shabbos Farbrengen in order to give inspiration to the Shluchim and people sitting around also in 770. And of course, there are the different workshops to help us enhance the exercise of our shluchus, but I would say that above all, the fact itself that you have the miniature UN, the representatives from the entire world sitting together for 5 days, discussing, seeking advice from one another, it's something which is incomparable to anything else in the world. And unfortunately, that point was missing this year, although I really take off my hat, not my kippah, take off my hat to the Vaad Shluchim International Committee of Shluchim that put together an amazing program this year for all of us to be able to enjoy and to benefit on Zoom. But nevertheless, we were able to have as much as possible to experience the Kinus HaShluchim together, and of course the banquet, which was put together so professionally, Baruch Hashem. And so, when it comes to the idea of shlichut, quote unquote, it's actually an Israeli slang. If you want to compliment someone for giving mesirut, giving of themselves, and doing community work, and even without any connection per se to Judaism, just someone doing an act of chesed. So you say, wow, this guy did shlichut. This person really did a proper shlichut. And I thought to myself, where does this concept come from? I'm convinced that it comes from Chabad. The Israelis that travel around the world, and even someone who's not necessarily observant per se, but they travel around the world, and all of a sudden they need Chabad for Shabbat, a Shabbat meal. All of a sudden they're turned on from Chabad here or there, even helping them with their travels. That almost implanted into the Israeli society the idea of shlichut, that this is something which is special. In other words, if you want to have an example of someone giving of themselves for a pure mission, shlichut, namely shlichut of Chabad, that is the best example, and that is the best way to emulate one's own spirituality in a very, very giving way. And so when we say that a person does shlichut, that's really, in a sense, it embodies what Chabad Shluchim do 24/7, or as I like to say, 25/8. This idea of shlichut, of emissary work, us Shluchim are emissaries of the Rebbe. The Rebbe sent us around the world to be able to touch every single Jewish heart. And this is something which, when we talk about living with the times, the Alter Rebbe, which we're going to celebrate this Shabbat, we're going to celebrate his Chag HaGeula, the Chag of Redemption. He said you have to live with the times. And he did not mean the New York Times. And so what does it mean to live with the times? It means with the parsha of the week. Right now, we are smack between Parashat Vayetze and Parashat Vayishlach. In other words, I can probably find a connection for you in any parsha with the idea of shlichut. But these 2 weeks, you don't have to look too far. Vayetze, just in the first pasuk, Vayetze Yaakov mi Be'er Sheva, Yaakov went out of Be'er Sheva, Vayelech Harana, he went to Haran. He went out of Israel to Haran. Without getting it too technical into the geographic area where Yaakov was and where he went to, the fact itself that he was in Israel and he went to Haran, which represents Charon Af Shel Makom. In other words, Chutz La'aretz, outside of Eretz Yisrael, away from spirituality. Yaakov went on shlichut. When he went out of Israel, you were able to tell that the tzaddik was not there. Why? Because he was on a mission. And when Yaakov Avinu goes to a place, he makes sure to make every stop, every situation that he comes to into Israel. Like the Tzemach said in Yiddish, Machda Eretz Yisrael. It's better to be in Eretz Yisrael, of course, but sometimes if we have to be temporarily away from Israel, nevertheless, we can still try our best to make the best of where we are, that it should be also Eretz Yisrael. What does that mean? When Mashiach comes, the entire world will be Eretz Yisrael. But before that, we need them to come here. So that's Vayetze. Yaakov Avinu was a shaliach. And we talk about the Shabbat coming up, that I don't have to do almost any interpretations. It's Parshat Vayishlach, from the same word of shlichut. Vayishlach Yaakov Malachim lefanav. So what is the idea that Yaakov sent Shluchim? He knew that the best way to calm Esav or to tame Esav was to send Shluchim, send messengers. Either way you cut the cake, Yaakov Avinu sent Shluchim. And what do we realize from that? We realize that when a shaliach goes out there, he represents the sender. And the same thing is by a shaliach. It is such a great zchut for some of us to be shluchim of the Rebbe and literally to represent the Rebbe in any place, in every place of the world. And so when we represent the Rebbe, it's a whole different approach. We're not coming as individuals. We're coming as representatives of the Rebbe. At the same time, we're no special than anyone else around us. We are regular people, just like everyone, but we have the great zechut that the Rebbe has nominated us to be shluchim. At the same time, every single person, the Rebbe said, you don't have to have a badge saying, I am a shliach. The fact itself that you can go out to your neighbor or to your friend or to your business acquaintance, you can also be a shliach. And that's why it was so important to Rabbi Diamond and myself to bring you this setting of a kinus hashluchim that you and we can all have a farbrengen together. It's not a speech. It's not a lecture per se. It's simply we're trying to build a certain ambiance, an atmosphere of what it feels to be, to share stories and to listen to stories, especially of our veteran shluchim that have had this chus to be out there on shlichus for sometimes I think all of us, all of the esteemed shluchim, besides for me, are out there for decades. Baruch Hashem, I have this chus to be on shlichus for almost 17 years. So can almost say for decades, 6+ years in upstate New York, and over 10 years, Baruch Hashem, over here in Rechavia in Yerushalayim. Hopefully soon we'll be able to share with you a couple of great stories. But I first want to give the platform. So first I want to give the 1 second. Just one. Please bear with me. Is Rabbi Wilhelm here?
All rabbis are here.
Rabbi Wilhelm soon will be joining us. He simply is driving around, and it was very kind that he said that he would be on soon. So Bezrat Hashem, we're going to have, but we'll do one shliach at a time. And first, I would like to ask Rabbi David Mesinter, who is a shliach in Johannesburg, South Africa. Rabbi Mesinter has come here on a number of occasions to Yerushalayim with groups, and also to CHABAD of Rechavia. And recently I had the zechut to participate. I was honored that he asked me to participate on a special, apparently every week, Rabbi Masinter arranges a worldwide Zoom for people, for former South Africans or current South Africans. And it was just in the holiday times, and I had this zechut to give a lesson for his group. And so without any further ado, it is a great honor to have Rabbi David Masinter. Please share with us words of wisdom and experience from your own shlichut. Welcome to Yerushalayim.
So firstly, lovely to see you again, and lovely to see you, Rabbi Safran, and everybody else participating. And a very special thank you to Levi Diamond, Rabbi Diamond, for inviting me, my own South African who went on Aliyah. Ki mitzion tzeitzei Torah. And we see that from CHABAD of Rechavia. You see what you're doing there. It's absolutely amazing. I've witnessed it firsthand, but now it's, in Mitzvah Hashem, through your work, we should have these Galas of Mashiach take it from Miyad. So I just want to begin with a story that took place in the early 1900s. Now, I want you to go back to the early 1900s. The Shtetler were mainly from, but people who lived in the bigger cities had already began to assimilate. And this story took place in the early 1900s. The previous Lubavitcher Rebbe was on a train. And it's a long story, I'll cut it short. He was on a train traveling somewhere in Russia, and he happened to walk through the dining room compartment. And sitting in the dining room compartment, I imagine it was the first class section of the train, sitting in the dining room compartment was a middle-aged man eating treif and drinking non-kosher wine. He looked up and he saw the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, who was a young man at the time, and he said, "Oi, you must be a son or a grandson of the fourth Lubavitcher Rebbe." The previous Rebbe looked at him and said, "I'm a grandson." The man immediately stopped eating his treif, and he got up, he paid the bill, and he left. A short while later, they got together, and the man just burst out crying. This happened a few times on the train. He got together with the previous Rebbe. The conductor tried to make a meeting. The guy became very emotional. The previous Rebbe writes that he thought there was something wrong with him. Eventually, he broke down and he told the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe the following story. He said, "I was born into a Chabad family. My father was a follower. He was a chassid of your grandfather, the Rebbe Marash, and you look very much like him." He said, "At a young age, I became quite rebellious. My father took me to see your grandfather for a blessing. It helped for a while, but I associated myself with very irreligious people, and eventually I left the fold completely." He said, "I joined the newly founded, I think it was the Haskalah movement or the progressive movement, and I joined it, but I'd left my roots completely." He said, "Years later, we had heard that the Russian government was planning a pogrom against the Jewish communities. So we wanted to ask your grandfather's advice, because the Schneerson family were quite connected with the Russian government. That's another story. But we knew he had connections. We wanted him to be aware of what was happening, and I was chosen to lead the delegation to go to Lubavitch. So I make the trip all the way to Lubavitch to go see your grandfather, and I arrange a private audience with him. Your grandfather sees me in the private audience. He remembers me. I discuss the issue with him. And your grandfather says, "You know what, you've traveled all this way. Stay overnight and let's meet again tomorrow." The next day, your grandfather called for me, and he said to me, "After you came to see me yesterday, I went to the grave of my father, the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Lubavitcher Rebbe, whose resting place is in Lubavitch. I discussed the problem with him at his grave, and my father doesn't think it's a problem. It's not so severe." He said, "When I heard your grandfather say those words, I discussed this with my father, the Tzemach Tzedek, had already passed away like 16 years. He said, I began to chuckle, because after all, Reform had removed any sort of mention of reform, of life after death, from their thinking, from the Siddur. I think it was very affected by Darwinism, etc., etc. He said, I began to chuckle when I heard your grandfather say that. And your grandfather looked at me for quite a while, and he became very serious with me. And he said, young man, you laughing, you chuckling to yourself because you live in a purely physical world. But for us who live in a physical and a spiritual world, it's very real for a tzaddik to reveal himself and tell us things of what's happening up on high. And then your grandfather just looked at me for a long time, and then he said to me as follows. He said, young man, how long can a young man run away from his roots? 50 or 55 years maximum. He said, your grandfather just looked at me. I became pale, the way he looked at me, the way he spoke to me. I walked out of that private audience shaking. He said, I went on my way. I went back to my old ways. But somehow at the back of my head, I always remembered somehow what your grandfather had told me. He said, last night, when I was eating non-kosher in the dining room compartment, I was eating over there, you walked by, I looked up. Last night, when I looked up at you, you looked exactly like your grandfather. It reminded me so clearly of what he had told me. But he said, guess what? Last night was my 55th birthday. And I remembered exactly what he said. A young man, how long can a person run away from his roots? 50 or 55 years maximum. You looked exactly like your grandfather. It reminded me, and I want to become from. And he follows the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he becomes from. That's a story that the previous Rebbe writes, by the way. It's a much longer story. I abridged it. But to me, that story epitomizes what Shlichus is all about. For everybody, by the way. Because there are people all over the world who are like that middle-aged man. They are waiting. They are waiting to have their menorah kindled. They are waiting to be aroused and come back. We connected. It's Hanukkah now. We all have an obligation to go out and light someone else's menorah. When we have the commandment to light the menorah, it wasn't just a historical thing. Every single day we have to light the menorah. We have to light our own menorah by positive thinking. But if we meet a Jew or a non-Jew whose menorah needs to be kindled, that becomes our obligation. And there are people waiting all over the world. My favorite, you asked me to speak a little bit about my shlichus. My favorite part of shlichus, my privilege, is working with a man by the name of Rabbi David Heller. Rabbi David Heller goes around, before COVID, probably had about 150 people every single Shabbos in his regular home for Shabbos meals. It was crazy how people sat. Last year, he put tefillin on 20,000 times. That means every day he would go around, it wasn't his full-time job, he would go around every spare moment he had, putting on tefillin on people. That becomes our obligation. Now, the Rebbe was very, very clear. The Rebbe had one dream, and that was to bring about the Izgalus of Mashiach, take it from Yad Mamish, a time where godliness will be revealed in the world. There will be no more pandemics, no more sickness, no more war, no more terrorism, a time where it will be absolute godliness in the world. And the Rebbe gave us very clear instructions how to do that. The Rebbe said, number one, miftzoyim, from tefillin, mezuzah, kashrus, etc., etc. Number two, the Rebbe said, get the world to increase in acts of goodness and kindness. Number three, publicize to the world that Mashiach is about to come. So if you had to ask all of us at this little mini Farbrengen here today, we all have that obligation. Some of us have beards and some of us are full-time in this, but each and every one of us are in emissary. I want you to go back to the story. Think about the divine providence of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe walking on the train. There's no coincidence in this world. Divine providence. He was walking there and he arouses this Jew to come back. And that's my challenge to everybody sitting here at this little kinnis today. The challenge is wherever we are, there's a Jew waiting to be inspired. And that's our obligation. And we have to just be ready to do that. So if you had to ask me what we have to be doing from this little Osifah here on the 15th of Kislev, we have to walk away as follows. We have to go through and look through what did the Rebbe want us to do. We have to go. Oh, see, somebody said yes. We have to go, we have to undertake, which is the Rebbe wanted us to do all those things. The Rebbe wanted us to get the world to increase in acts of goodness and kindness. The Rebbe wanted us to publicize to the world Mashiach is going to come. You wake up in the morning, what do I do first? You know what you do first? Whatever comes your way. And whichever Jew you meet or any human being you meet, there's something to do with them. So I'm going to end with that. Let's all be inspired to go turn the world upside down and bring about these Galus of Mashiach through the Miftzoyim of the Rebbe. And please God, we shall all be united in Yerushalayim, Yireh Kodesh. That's my Farbrengen.
That's wonderful. Can you hear me, please? Can you hear me? Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Rabbi Masinter. That was amazing. And we look forward to seeing you, Mir Hashem, not only on your next trip to visit, but you should be able to come here and set up shop. We'll save you a box seat over here, right here near the third base of Mikdash. Amen. Amen. Bezrat Hashem.
Amen.
It is my honor to welcome Rabbi Aryeh Safran, who received the MBE, Member of British Empire from the Queen of England. Rabbi Safran, you should know, is one of my model Shluchim. Since I was a child, anytime I had a chance to go and to be with Shluchim, I always, I guess I knew deep down that I'm going to be a shliach one day. And when I was learning in the yeshiva in London, I remember it was 1993, the Shavuot. I went to spend Yontif with Rabbi Safran. I'll never forget that Yontif, and we've remained connected ever since. And I have to mention at this time, Rabbi Safran's late father-in-law, Rabbi Vogel, who is such a special man. He passed away just a couple of months ago, I believe. But for several years, he lived over here right near Rechavia. And he came here to our Chabad house. He gave shiurim in our Chabad house, Rabbi Eliyahu Yui Vogel. And he is strongly missed by me personally, and I'm sure by many others here in our community. And Rabbi Safran would come here and to spend some time. And it is a great honor for me to invite Rabbi Safran, Rabbi Aryeh Safran of Ilford, England, to please share with us his perspective of the Farbrengen of the Kinus HaShluchim. Welcome, Rabbi Safran.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Rabbi Goldberg, for that introduction. I can't wait to see my, what happens after 120 years, what you're going to say about me. So just take a pinch of salt to all of that.
No, don't worry. You're staying right here. You're not going anywhere.
Baruch Hashem, yeah. Rabbi Misinta, thank you for taking us into the introduction here, because, these types of Farbrengens are a little bit of a challenge as to how does it actually flow? So you got 4 rabbis, each going to speak for 15 minutes. It's like, this like a dating agency. You go around the table and see who is going to be my shliach, who's going to be my husband, my wife, and so on and so forth. So it's nice to have this opportunity to be able to pick up on where both you, Rabbi Goldberg and Rabbi Mesinta, have spoken. I want to share a little bit from a little different perspective, if I may. First of all, L'chaim, even though for me it's 10 to 6 in the evening. It's 10 to 6 in the evening, and it's today is Tesvav Kislev. Now, what's Tesvav Kislev? Kislev is full of dates. Tesvav Kislev is the day after Yodale Kislev, correct. Tesvav Kislev is the Chevra Kadisha day in Crown Heights, and it's our Chevra Kadisha day in the Redbridge area, which is Ilford is in the township of Redbridge. Redbridge area, Chevra Kadisha, which my father, Shalom, initiated and started probably about 35, 37 years ago, and I was one of the first recruits there. So what we do is we have a fast day. We've fasted all day today. That's why I've only been home about 20 minutes since the fast went out, and I'm a bit reticent of saying the L'chaim, but I'm at least looking at it, which what we do at a Farbrengen. And usually we have a Seudah at the end of this fast day and learning. And unfortunately, because we are in lockdown still in London until tomorrow, we cannot have this Seudah. So I'm looking at this opportunity again, just Hashgacha Pratis, divine providence, that we should be just sitting here together at this Farbrengen. Also, now the longest Farbrengen, which everybody was talking about, and I read a little article, I think it was today or possibly yesterday, somebody sent me from the Jerusalem Post, in which it mentioned some of the lead Farbrengers or the coordinators, and one of them was Rabbi Wilhelm from Oslo, who's not yet here, but he might be listening. And probably if it wasn't for him, I don't believe I would have actually agreed to actually speak to you tonight. And I'll tell you why. Because I went on to that Farbrengen like many other people do. I don't consider myself I'd be a little bit of a nibus here. I don't consider myself a Farbrenger. Some people sit and they talk for hours and hours and hours and hours. Yes, in my own Chabad house, it's going to be your Tes Kislev. We'll have a little Farbrengen over our Shabbos in our little packages because of distancing and all the precautions that we have to put in. But nonetheless, it's not really my thing. However, I was sitting on this Farbrengen. I just come off from a very inspiring shir, which I give on Tuesday nights. I'm in this window between the fast day and giving a shir in an hour and a half from now. And when Rabbi Diamond called me, I said, okay, I've got to do this. Now, I'll tell you why. First of all, he called. But this is what happened. Rabbi Wilhelm picked me out and said, say something. Rabbi Safran, say something. I was just coming on just to listen. I was inspired from my shia. I came on. Most people, I did anyway, would have come on at 10, 11, 12 o'clock and stayed on an hour or two before we fell asleep naturally. So he said to me, speak. And I actually told 2 stories, which I'm not going to repeat now, about my own personal yechidus with the Rebbe. The first time when I was 12 and a half, and the second time when I was engaged to be married, and the Rebbe sent us on shlichus to where we are today in Kanai Nahora in Adar, February. We'll be coming up to our 38th year, Kanai Nahora. And Baruch Hashem, we've seen tremendous growth, even against tremendous challenges. We're living in a community today which is very changed. We're living here because the Rebbe sent us here, but at one time it was the largest concentration of Jews in the whole of Europe. Today, it's very much not like that. A lot of the Jews have moved out and been replaced by Indians and Muslims and so on and so forth. My wife, actually observing this, some years ago said we've got to move more eastward, which means more into the country away from London. And Baruch Hashem, since then, we've set up 2 Chabad houses. So actually 3 Chabad houses, one in a place called Baka, still with Rabbi Mr. Brahman. And we brought new Shluchim a year and a half ago, and a few months ago, maybe 15 months ago, Rabbi and Yosef Yitzchok and Rivka Posen in a place called Epping, which is a countryside. But that is where the Jews has followed. So you want to know what Shlichus is? Shlichus is about where are the Jews? And we've got to find them. And whereas in the past, perhaps Jews used to choose to live close to a shul, a Chabad house, today we don't see that. They moved away. So others have given up the formal body and say, okay, we'll have to condense the shuls because it's not worth it financially. But where have the Jews gone? Jews don't disappear. They've gone. If anything, they multiply. So where have they gone? So we track them where they've gone. And we actually built 2 Chabad houses, which are thriving as a result of following where those Jews went, rather than saying, oh, they've left, so what are we going to do about them? So coming back to this shlichus, coming back to this Farbrengen, the Farbrengen for me was inspiring beyond words. Any moment we got onto it, there was something exciting going on. There were language barriers, but you know what? Even with the language barriers, we don't all speak everybody's language, but even with the language barriers, we were able to identify with the people that were there. So when Rabbi Diamond said to me, come on, we just want to have an extension of our Farbrengen and just give the people a little bit about it. I said, you know, we actually have an obligation. Sometimes it's easier to say no than it is to say yes. It's very easy to say no. It's sometimes harder to say yes. And even as Shluchim, after many years, maybe we just have to extend ourselves a little bit out of our comfort zone, outside of our comfort zone, and try and give some others what perhaps we had the privilege to have because we were brought up, Baruch Hashem, and thank God, Ashreinu for that, we were brought up in the Daled Amos, in the 4 cubits of 770, and the Rebbe in 770, and Lubavitch in America, Lubavitch in its essence as it was, as it spread out across the globe. And having spent 7, 6, 7 years or like that as Bochrim, as students in that environment, people don't have that, and we need to share it. And I realized that when Rabbi Wilhelm, and I got some positive comments after, which was very nice in addition, so it was really nice to see, that we have to share what we have. And that's why when Rabbi Diamond said to me, come on, give us something, I said, all right, I'll do it. Especially when he said I was going to share the platform with such wonderful people. The other thing Rabbi Wilhelm kept saying when he was looking at it, he said, this is a Farbrengen. And it's Farbrengen, we don't want to be talking to black screens. So we should actually be talking to people. And if people are hiding behind, on their Zoom, behind their names, it makes it difficult to engage. So this is a Farbrengen, and I'll only say it once. There's usually a reason why somebody's hiding. Either they're in their pajamas, or they're in the middle of eating, or maybe they're cleaning. But whatever it is, I just saw 2 great pictures just flash up. Maybe this is something what you can do. I want to share with you, I don't know how much time I have, but I want to share with you 2 thoughts. Farbrengen is where people interact. So hopefully it won't just be me, and maybe we'll come, Rabbi Mesinta will come back, and Rabbi Goldberg will come. You just give me 1 more minute. Is that what you just said? Is that what you put your finger up? Rabbi Goldberg.
I was saying kol hakavod. I went like this.
Oh, I saw 1 finger. That's like Rabbi Kotlarski. Rabbi Kotlarski stands in front of the podium when people are speaking and it says 1 minute or 2 minutes. Anyway, it takes me, everybody who knows me, it takes me 10 minutes to say hello. So I'm just getting past that. But please feel free to interject if you will. I want to share with you the amazing challenges we have at the same time, opportunities that have unfolded for us across the globe. One of them is this miracle that we're sitting at right now. And that is the world of Zoom, or whether you call it Teamworks, whatever, there's a different mediums for this. The world of Zoom. We're sitting here, my time, 6 o'clock in the afternoon, connected to Eretz Yisrael, the Holy Land, to South Africa, different parts of our country, the global, the London arena, and possibly different parts of Eretz Yisrael as well, and Oslo somewhere in the up there. We Chabad have found something, and I have found this in my shlichus, found something at our fingertips which we had and we never used. The Rebbe embraced technology. When everybody else was pushing it away, the Rebbe embraced it. Now, we don't know why the Rebbe embraced it then, but we can certainly realize why he embraced it for us now. First of all, Baruch Hashem, thank God we have years and years and years of video footage, which we can share with people, inspire people, our own children, our own families. So we don't have it in the real thing. But look, nor is Zoom real, or is it? It depends on our perspective, where we are. And I believe that I have certainly seen it. I do numerous Zooms during the week. I do a Facebook Live every single day. And we're engaging with people on all levels, learning, discussion groups, interesting people we bring in to speak, who are participating, who would never have stepped over the Chabad house threshold for a shiur. They wouldn't do it. It just was not going for years and years and years. And yet now, through this challenge that we have the opportunity to be able to tune in a way which was not possible before. People just saw this as a waste of time. It's, face-to-face, of course, nothing beats face-to-face, but as long as we have this opportunity, and when things return to some form of normality, this is going to remain. And I'll come to Chanukah in a minute. But somebody introduced me through this medium in fact, it was our new Shliach, Rabbi Posen, who's technologically minded. I'm not that way, inclined in the same way. And he said to me, do you know there's an app today in which you can download every single sikha, every single talk of the Rebbe, every single Hasidic discourse of the Rebbe. You can download them and you have it. And I had an urge, I had a feeling that I wanted to review something. And I went back, you don't know why, to the year Tovshin Lamed Vov. Tovshin Lamed Vov is approximately 1976. 1976 was a very important year for me because that was the year I came to study in Morristown, New Jersey, which I recall in the confines. I started off with a Tishrei around the Rebbe. And in fact, it was the year later when the Rebbe had his heart attack in Shmini Atzeret, Simchas Torah. I was actually there in the shul at that time. So I was thrown right into it. So 76 became a very important time for me. And I decided I am going to study slowly every day a piece of those Farbrengens from 1976, Toshin Lamed Vav, which you can print out. You have them on papers. You can actually print it out. And I want to pick up something from there, which I've been learning over the last couple of days. The Rebbe was bringing up this concept of Machshava Tova HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mitzaref L'Maisa, which means a good thought, the Almighty is Mitzaref. The Almighty joins it on to Maisa, to deed. Now, how is that possible? Either we've done it or we haven't done it. And can we be satisfied about thinking about something, or do we actually have to do it? And if we only thought about the things that Rabbi Mesinta spoke about, and I stayed in my dining room or stayed in my office and thought about putting on tefillin people, thought about lighting menorahs on Hanukkah, just thought about how we're going to overcome the challenges of public gatherings for Hanukkah this year, would the job have been done? So Rebbe highlights this, and he says, how is it possible that the Almighty will take something that we think about and is mitzaref, he joins it on, so to speak, to Maisa, to deed. And the reason, and the Rebbe explains, since the Almighty is Hoya, Hoiva, V'yeh, past, present, and future, all like one, therefore the Almighty can mish it all together and he can make it into one. But then the Rebbe points out a diuk, a point which is highlighted by the Alter Rebbe, the first Lubavitch Rebbe in the Sefer HaTanya in Perek Zayin. And there the Alter Rebbe specifically makes point of this. He says that the Almighty, that those words is mitzaref l'maisa. Yes, he sort of joins it on, but he doesn't say b'makom maisa, instead of deed. But rather he joins it on, meaning to say that a thought could be one process and a deed could be another process. So the Rebbe was explaining that there has to be maisa, there has to be deed. And we can't just think about things, but we have to actually do them. And this is a challenge. I want to tell you a Hanukkah story. A Hanukkah story some years ago now, whereby we were deciding, because we're always in this challenge, financial. Should we put an advert in the paper, in the local paper, about our Hanukkah lighting? At that time, it was one menorah. Kanai Nahor, we have in the area, in the wider area, we have now 7 public lightings, Baruch Hashem, instead of 1, which is the oldest. It's probably 35 or 36 years old now. And should we put this, and we had a public gathering around it, should we put the advert in the newspaper? Yes. Can't afford it. No, we won't. Will it bring any more people? They came from last year. It's the same people going to come. What are you going to do? Anyway, we thought about it, Maisa. We decided to put it in. To that event came a lady and her daughter, which we found out later because we engaged with them, who had come from I'm not going to identify the exact place, who came from the former Soviet Union. Was living, I live in Ilford, Essex, let's call it, if there is such a thing, the posh side of town. But there is a downside, a downtown, let's call it downtown. You all know what that means. That's where she was living, in a tiny little room, having escaped from the former Soviet Union. How she ended up here, I have no idea. And she's there in this room. She happened to pick up this paper, didn't know anything about Jews living around her, and came to this event. From that, we engaged with her, and we went to this little nowhere room. It was a room, literally a room. We put up a mezuzah. The kid was only 3 or 4 years old at the time. We started learning with her, brought her stuff from our cheder. She came to our cheder, and over a period of time, she then went on aliyah to Israel. It didn't work out. She came back here, is living on the other side of London. Today, she and her daughter are 100% kosher Jews, keep everything. The daughter is looking for a shidduch, and we communicate regularly, even though she doesn't live in this neighborhood. Why? Because we put the adverts in the paper. That's where it came from. Was it right? Was it wrong? My trustees probably wouldn't be able to justify it that particular way that we would. But we have this challenge now. What do we do this year? So let's share with you. I said we have 7 lightings. Each one is a public event where a few hundred people come to them, but we're not allowed to make public events. What are we going to do? What can we do? I sat with the council, and I pleaded with them. I said, we need permission to be able to do this event. You know what? We're not bringing anybody along. We're going to Zoom it. We're going to live stream each to a dedicated website, live stream each one to a dedicated website, and more people than in the past will be able to participate because they don't have to even stand out in the cold. So they argued about whether this is going against the rules of the country because of lockdown, and what happens if somebody comes and stands there. I said, look, we're not going to do music. We're just going to stand there for 15 minutes. We're going to light a menorah. I'm going to say we can bring one other person. So I'm going to try and get the mayor or the local councillor, and we're going to say some words, and we're going to do it. But then we said that the Shluchim together, Baruch Hashem, we meet now regularly together, a few groups. So, but, you know, that's nice. Oh, it's nicht dos. You know, there's something missing here. What's missing? There's something missing. So we came up with a brilliant idea, and to make, you must have them in I don't know if you have them in Israel, but I would have thought in South Africa for sure. And that's a drive-in movie theater. We have a drive-in movie theater where you go to a big public park. This one holds 300 cars. There's a big screen. Technically, you can watch Alle Schwarzjahr on the screen, and you switch on your radio, and you can sit in your car and do what you want. And so we hired this place. It's in Edinburgh. It's about 20 minutes away from the main area. 300 cars we can put into it. And we've got a program there with entertainment. We're going to light a menorah. Somebody's built for us a special menorah for that event, which is in the form of chains in order to message behind it. He built it himself to take us out of the chains of COVID and lockdown and change it. We put it live. We have 40 or 50 cars left. 100, 250 or so were sold within a couple of days. How does that happen? Machshava tova Kodesh Baruch Hu mitzarev l'maisa. We have to be, the Rebbe always said, shliach halasah, that the shliach on the spot. This is the essence of the shlichus. When the Rebbe chose a person, that each of us have a story why we're in the places that we are. When the Rebbe chose for us to go to a specific shlichus, the Rebbe knew what he was doing. When the Rebbe sent Aryeh and Devorah Safra into this place and all those Jews at that time, and it's a much lesser environment, and maybe even a challenging environment to be in, but we're here. The Rebbe wants us here, Rebbe put us here. So we're here. And when he said he wanted us to use our own seichel, our own intellect, use your talents, You are a person. As the former chief rabbi, Rabbi Lord Sachs, who passed away, it's not even Shluchim, I think, just coming up to Shluchim, he said that great people make leaders, but the Lubavitcher Rebbe, what did he make? Sorry, make followers. Lubavitcher Rebbe made leaders. He took us kids out of yeshiva and made us into leaders. And over time, we develop, listen, we're human beings, we make mistakes and so on and so forth, but we inspire each other. And that's what the whole essence of the Kinnus, the coming together, which this year was different, to come up with different ideas. And I believe that this year's Hanukkah program for us is going to be greater than any of the others. Because when everybody else is schloffing, they're sleeping, Chabad came up with ideas which is going to knock people off their feet because nothing else is happening because we're in the middle of COVID. But that's what Zoom is. That's the gift that Zoom has given us. And so, even though we're living in very challenging times, and even though we are begging, not only asking for Mashiach, now we're begging for Mashiach who's going to take us out of all of this is Ikvasa the Mashiach. If this is not Ikvasa the Mashiach, which means the footsteps of Mashiach, I mean the heels of Mashiach, if this is not this time, then I don't know what it is, because it is. And people are struggling financially and business, and each Chabad house and charities, money is depleted. But you know what? We'll find a way, because the Rebbe wants us to do this. And the Rebbe never left us behind, will never lead us behind. But we got to be, finally, this is my last point for now, is we got to be connected. And how can we connect? We connect by listening to your rabbi. We connect by a Farbrengen. We connect by learning the things that the Rebbe left us to learn, to study, and to inspire. But I'll always say, and where I started, a full circle, Ma'aser hu ikar hadid is really the most important thing. We can think about something that's great, but we actually have to put it into deed. And that's what the Rebbe demanded from us. And Rabbi Goldberg will know that from a beautiful Farbrengen like this, there has to be some form of Ma'aser, some form of deed has to come out of this. Now I'll leave that to Rabbi Goldberg, who's your rabbi, and Shliach to take it from there. But for now, I want to say to you, I lost you, did I? Yeah, I am. Can you hear me still?
You're good. We hear you.
Yeah, I just finished off. Let's say to you, Rabbi Goldberg, I want to wish you continued Hatzlocha. I have been to you a few times, and it was great to see you move from the little downstairs under the windmill to the big shul under the Beis HaKnesses HaGadol. You have now an office on the main road there. It's beautiful to see growth. And one thing we shouldn't lose, now I'm saying this to Rabbi Mesinta as well, because sometimes when we go to the Kinnis, you can feel a little bit depleted because this guy's got $1 million or $10 million or $100 million building they're building, and they got this much space. It's not about the space and it's not about the building. It's about what goes on inside it. And every Chabad house is the same, whether it is a small area or it's a very large area, a small building or a massive building, a school complex or a big site. That's just buildings. It's the energy that's inside it. So I want to wish you continued Hatzlocha coming up to Tes Kislev, where we all inspire each other for Rosh Hashanah Chassidus and learning a little bit more Mitzvah Hashem, which we'll all undertake. Wish me zoicha to Mashiach Tzidkeinu Meher Yameinu. Now I'll say L'chaim, L'chaim.
Amen. L'chaim, L'chaim. Thank you, Rabbi Safran, very, very much. That was amazing. I really appreciate your inspiration. And we look forward to seeing you over here soon in person, very, very soon. Halavai, Amen. So speaking about Rabbi Wilhelm, I think Rabbi Wilhelm meant to be here in Machshava, in thought, but I'm not sure if he heard your speech about the Maisa, the Rebbe's inspiration about doing the deed. But it's okay. Rabbi Wilhelm is a great friend. He was here for a few weeks, just about a half a year ago. And I really hope, I guess, in the next 15 or 20 minutes, he can still come on. And I hope he'll still be able to inspire us, at least for a few minutes. But I want to share with you, before I tell you my two stories, I want to share with you, firstly, along the lines of Rabbi Safran, how we here in Rechavia are utilizing the opportunity. Here he is. Here's Rabbi Wilhelm. And so I'm bringing him in right now. 1 second. Rabbi Wilhelm?
Already been admitted.
Rabbi Wilhelm?
Yes.
Welcome, Rabbi Shaul Wilhelm from Oslo, Norway. That is amazing. Thank you very much. This is really Hashgacha Pratis, which I'm going to talk about a little bit right after you. But I want to mention that Rabbi Wilhelm, he knows the story. What I'm going to say now is that in a great way, the fact that I'm a shliach is thanks to Rabbi Wilhelm. I'll tell you why. Because when I was in camp, in summer camp in Detroit, 1989, I was 12 years old. Oops, Now you know how old I am. And we were on the way, we're about to go on a trip. And Rabbi Wilhelm was one of the counselors or learning teachers, and we were waiting for the bus to leave. And Rabbi Wilhelm, I'll never forget this. Rabbi Wilhelm said, we were going through the different songs, and he said, now any child that is from a family of Shluchim, should sing the song together. And I cannot explain to you the feeling in my heart that said, wow, I wish I was a shliach. I will for sure be a shliach. And so thank you, Rabbi Wilhelm, for giving me the inspiration to be the Rebbe Shliach. And thank you for being one of the main organizers of the longest Farbrengen in the world. You have great talents. And please share with us an inspiration and a story from your shlichus in Norway, Oslo. Bavakasha.
So thank you very, very much, Rabbi Goldberg. What should I say? You wanted, and Baruch Hashem, today, you don't only wish, but you are. You don't only wish, but you are part of the. You're a shliach, Baruch Hashem, and bringing other shluchim. So l'chaim to you, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to be together with your community in Yerushalayim. And inspiration from our shlichus. So if I can share just at first a general idea, I think one of the aspects of shlichus that took me years to appreciate is what actually shlichus has done to me personally, and realizing its effect, the Rebbe's effect of shlichus to so many. And that is, although it sounds almost basic, but true Ahavas Yisrael. In other words, in today's Hayom Yom, the Rebbe writes how the Baal Shem Tov would say that one needs to have Mesirus Nefesh. One has to be able to have self-sacrifice for loving a fellow Jew, even someone you barely know. This concept is lofty and seems almost impossible for regular people like us. And then we're blessed to go on shlichus. We're blessed to be part of the absolute greatest force of positivity that the world has, and being able to bring the light out of every situation, as dark as it is, to always be able to zero in on the light and the warmth of whatever situation. And that, Rabbi Goldberg just spoke about him being 12 years old and wishing. And when I was also 12, 13, 14, whatever, as I couldn't imagine that this is something that I, a regular person, could attain on any level, to truly be there for another Yid, whoever that person is. And I think that that's honestly we're bringing. So if there's something I can share just from being on shlichus, is actually zeroing in on the positivity of every other people, and being able to see that in every other person. As far as our shlichus itself is concerned, there are, Baruch Hashem, beautiful hashgacha pratis that we have seen and witnessed in our life, and some are not just semi-miraculous, but actually miraculous. But I'll share with you one such experience. Norway has we are now in the dead of the winter, and our day is very short. In the summer, it's the complete other way. So there's tremendous amount of light and very little darkness. Something that, as Hashem, we're all going to experience soon. Mashiach comes. There we actually have it in a very real way in the summer. So we have going up north sometimes in order to help kosher organizations to give them the kosher certification for whatever organization sends us. So in the middle of the summer, when the sun is shining almost 24 hours a day, what does that mean to a shliach? That you can put on tefillin 24 hours a day with people. You have no limit. Anytime you meet someone, there's no excuse. Put on tefillin. So going up north for a kosher plant, to kosher the plant, so it's 11 o'clock at night. It's at night, but the sun is shining in full glory. And a car screeches up and says, you all know Hebrew, Matau Sekan, what are you doing here? What am I doing here? Maybe you can tell me what you're doing here. I finally learned how to answer my standard Israeli brother. Why am I the odd one here? So he says, what am I doing? I live here. This is, when I talk to you about no man's land, this is no man's land. There's more. There's 100 times more cattle and sheep and chickens there than human beings. So what do you do here? He has a bar. Come to my bar. Okay. When a person says come to my bar, I say I'll be there shortly, and come with tefillin. To cut the long story short, he was ready to put on tefillin immediately. Standing there in front of hundreds of people, oblivious, hadn't put on tefillin in more than 40 years. He said Shema Yisrael in a way that we would dream of saying Shema Yisrael in Ne'ilah. Incredible. But there was another Jew there, the one who actually came from Israel to arrange the entire kosher certification, but he came from the business angle, and he was not putting on tefillin all day. He wasn't interested in putting on tefillin all day. But when this guy was standing there crying at 11:45 at 11:45 p.m. with tefillin, what does a shliach do? We're salesmen, right? No, maybe you put on tefillin. You see a guy standing in front of hundreds of people, doesn't care, and is crying, excited about putting on tefillin. Says, okay, well, I'll put on tefillin. I'll put on tefillin when we go to the bridge. In this beautiful place, a corner that Hashem created, there's try to imagine two snow-capped mountains, a fjord in between, and a bridge that crosses the fjord. And if you go there on the 21st of June, which is the longest day of the year, the sun dips down at Chatzois, at midnight, for 60 seconds. You take out your watch, the sun dips under the horizon, you look at your watch, and 60 seconds later, the sun is up. So this wasn't June 21st, this was June 23rd or 4th. So the sun dips down not for 1 minute, but for 6 minutes. But people from all over, if you're lucky and it's good weather, it's like a sight that's truly more Abu Masecha Hashem. So he says, I'll put on tefillin when we go to the bridge. Okay? Come to the bridge, it's a little before 1 o'clock. Chatzois was at 1:20 or something. So about 1 o'clock, 1:05, true to his word, he puts on tefillin. And a few minutes later, the sun goes down. The sun comes up. You tell him, no. You said you're going to put on tefillin on the bridge. He said, what do you mean? I just put on tefillin. But that was yesterday. He says, I got to do this again. I got to go back to Israel and tell my friends I put on tefillin twice in 20 minutes on 2 separate days. That's something that a shliach, as even a person who I respect, I'm watching right now, Rabbi Safran, with all of the greatness of Azam Maisa, you can't say. This is an exclusive for Norway. Bottom line, we all have to take our tefillin with us wherever we go, whether we carry the name Shliach or not. The Rebbe clearly, in the last years, when we were zeicha to hear the Rebbe speak, and the Rebbe said again and again that every Yid is a Shliach. Every Yid, not only every Lubavitcher, every Yid is a Shliach. We all have to walk around with our tefillin or with something with us that when we have an opportunity, in any time when we meet another Jew, to really use the moment to connect with Hashem. That is what shlichus is. And that's the greatest gift that the Rebbe taught us. And there is no greater fulfillment and meaning in our own day to know that we were able to actually bring kodesh into every ma'aser choil, to bring holiness into any minute of the day. That, I believe, if I can say it, is and encapsulates what shlichus is all about. L'chaim, Rabbi Goldberg.
L'chaim, Rabbi Wilhelm, thank you very, very much. That was amazing. You should have continued atzlacha in your shlichus. And I'm glad that it wasn't only a thought of connecting to our Farbrengen, but Lamaisa, you really connected beautifully to our Farbrengen, as Rabbi Safran alluded to us. Big Yasher Koach, we look forward to seeing you here soon. And so I want to mention about the Hanukkah over here. Rabbi Safran talked about how we're going to celebrate Hanukkah in the current limitations from the virus. So first of all, we have our 7-8 menorahs displayed beautifully all around the area. We actually have a menorah.
Rabbi Goldberg, sure. I'm sorry for interrupting. Sure. I'm on my phone, not on my computer. So as I'm flipping through, I see that we have the honor of having Mrs. Chana Sharfstein here. That's unbelievable.
Right, that's right.
Wow. I would have come much more prepared. I'm just now going through the phone. You know, there's only 4 faces on every. So before I saw Rabbi Safra, Rabbi Goldberg, and Rabbi David, someone, I'm sorry, I
Rabbi David Mesinter, Shliach in Johannesburg.
Okay, so I missed that. But now I'm turning, so they see Mrs. Chana Sharfstein.
Rebbetzin Sharfstein, we are
interrupting, but Mrs. Sharfstein,
okay.
in all honesty, Mrs. Sharfstein is the first, I think we can say the first, certainly of the first Shluchim of the Rebbe, one way or another, to any part of Scandinavia, including Norway. And it's a big honor for me to actually see her here tonight. Thank you, Mrs. Sharfstein. Thank you for all you've done. And she has a tremendous amount to tell you about shlichus in Scandinavia. Don't let her get away with it. If she hasn't spoken yet to you, you have to get it out of her one day.
Yes, we are very privileged that Rebbetzin Sharfstein lives here and is here often. And thank you very much for joining us. And Bezrat Hashem, we will hear from you, Bezrat Hashem, in the right time. And so basically, we talk about Hanukkah. So we have a menorah in the Kikar Paris, in the Paris Square, where we have all of the hafganot, all of the protests over here every Motzei Shabbos. And so if you're here in the area at 7 o'clock, not this coming Motzei Shabbos, but next week Motzei Shabbos, please join us, because we're probably going to have several thousand people at the largest menorah lighting in the world, from all of the people that are coming to protest, as they've been doing for the past 6 or 7 months against the government. So we're going to bring light. It's not going to be the first time. Last year we also had a lot of people, but the streets were not blocked off. This time the streets will be all ready for us to host all the many people for the menorah lighting. Also, we usually have a big Hanukkah celebration for families. Sometimes we built one year we built the balloon menorah. One year we built a big chocolate menorah. One year we built a big ice menorah. So this year we have a great idea called Binyan Madlik, which means that we are encouraging every building to coordinate a personal Hanukkah party. They can choose whatever night you want. We are going to supply you with donuts and the song sheets and the hafalah activity for you to do, and of course the menorah over here we call it Chanukiah, and the candles. And I think it's very important to be able to have many more people participate in the activities of CHABAD of Rechavia on this Hanukkah. Especially, there will be many people that will unfortunately be alone. And this will be an opportunity, anyways, we meet with our neighbors. So it will be an opportunity to be able to meet new neighbors and to be able to take care and be concerned about neighbors in your own building. Binyan Madlik. So please let us know if you can be the representative in your own building. I want to share with you my own personal humble thought about Shlichut. When we talk about emissary work and outreach work from the Rebbe, to spread Yiddishkeit around the world, I think a very important point, if not the most important point, is that the idea of divine providence. You know, in my opening remarks, I mentioned about Yaakov Avinu traveling from Be'er Sheva to Haran, and then in this week's Parsha Vayishlach, and it's all planned from Hashem. Every step that we take is planned from Hashem. Even if you're not a quote-unquote shliach 24/7, everything we do at every step of our lives is planned from Hashem. But I find when we do shlichut of the Rebbe, we see divine providence much, much clearer than in any other scenario in our lives. This is just my own personal impression, and it's amazing to be able to be part of Hashem's hand carried out live, watching it carry out. You just have to put yourself to the side a little bit and allow Hashem's plan to play out in the most beautiful way. And so one story I want to tell you, this is very short, but it happened last year on the second night of Hanukkah. We had a number of groups to give out, to go door to door and give out menorahs and candles, as we will be having this year as well. And I come back at about 10:30 at night, and I see something unbelievable next to the door. You know, we are on King George, Baruch Hashem, right in the main street. And the light was open, the door was locked, but I see on the floor, right next to the door, which was locked, a menorah with 2 candles burned out, and it was clear to me that someone either didn't have a home or was far from their home, and they wanted to light the menorah. We have a little table outside the Chabad house with 10 or 20 kits of menorah and the candles, and that really warmed my heart more than anything else. There was a person who I will never know probably who that was, but he or she wanted to fulfill the mitzvah of lighting the menorah, and they utilized that moment right by the door of CHABAD of Rechavia, and they left, and the menorah remained there even a few hours afterwards. And I want to share with you another story which happened, as I mentioned earlier, that before my wife and I were shluchim over here, we were shluchim in upstate New York, in New City in Rockland County. And this is an amazing story of Hashgacha Pratit, divine providence. And I chose this story because it connects between Hashgacha Pratit and Hanukkah, which is coming up. There's a large chain of shopping centers called ShopRite all around the tri-state area and beyond, all around the United States, ShopRite. And when I came to New City in 2010, I had a dream. It's good to dream. So I had a dream. New City was at the time 65% Jewish, maybe a million of Shomer Shabbos families. That's an unbelievable amount of neshamot. And I thought it would be very important to put a large menorah inside ShopRite. And so I wrote a letter, and I went to meet the manager of ShopRite, and he said, "Yeah, okay, I'll pass on the letter to the management." And of course, I never heard from him again. He was an Italian Gentile, and he was a nice guy, but I guess this wasn't very high on his priority list. So the next summer, I decided that I'm going to go directly to the Insera. ShopRite is part of the Insera family, also an Italian family. They own the entire ShopRite. And so I looked up how to reach the Insera management. I called them up and they said, please send us a request. I thought to myself, I'm a little guy, young shliach. Who knows if they're ever going to respond to my letter? But I said, you got to try. If you don't try, you're never going to learn. And so I wrote a letter. And in the letter, I wrote that the menorah itself is going to cost $900, I think it was $950. And this will belong to you, and you'll keep it in ShopRite. And every year, you'll get your manager to light the menorah. And so I wrote down on my calendar that if I don't receive a response in 2 weeks, Monday morning, I'm going to follow up with them. This time, I'm not going to let them get away with it. And so the Thursday before, which is 10 days after I sent the letter or faxed it, whatever it was, the Thursday I come to my office and I see a letter from Insera Supermarkets Limited. So I was shocked. I opened the letter and it says, Dear Rabbi Goldberg, in response to your request to have a menorah displayed prominently in our ShopRite in New City, here's a check for I think it was around $3,800. Since we have 4 ShopRites around Rockland County, we want you to use this money to purchase 4, not 1, but 4 menorahs and to display them prominently. And I was very, very amazed. And of course, we arranged that year to have menorahs displayed over there. But the story is not over yet, because that year, the first night of Hanukkah was Friday night. And so things were very, very busy. I wasn't planning on being in the office. And I had sent a press release that we're doing a special can menorah. We did it over here too. But that year we did in the Palisades Mall, the second largest mall at the time in the United States, in West Nyack. And we were going to do a huge event. And I made a press release. I sent it around to all of the newspapers. And I was hoping that they would come and do a proper coverage of that event. We also connected it with a sister city over here in Israel. I believe it was Modi'in, if I remember correctly. And we arranged that the food should be sent, or the clothes that people brought, something to that effect. It was sent to Israel. It turns out that Friday, I came to the office at about 11:05. I just had to get something. I wasn't planning on being in the office that day, just for about 60 seconds. As I'm standing in the office, I get a phone call. Shalom, Rabbi. I understand that tonight is Hanukkah. Are you having some kind of menorah lighting tonight? Some kind of celebration? So the first thing that occurred to me was, I didn't say it, I thought it. What do you mean? It's Shabbos tonight. We light the menorah before Shabbos. We're not going to have like a Hanukkah celebration. But Hashem put in my mind, in that split moment, a great idea. I told them, you know what? It's Friday night tonight, so therefore, because it's the Shabbat, we're going to light the menorah before Shabbat, and we're not really going to have a special Hanukkah celebration per se. But if you want, in a half hour, I'm going to be at ShopRite for the first time lighting the large menorah, and actually I have a car menorah on top of my car already, so you'll really, really, if you want to come quickly, you'll see this setup of this special event happening. And so they met me in a half hour. They met me at ShopRite. On Shabbos, the next day, some people that had received the newspaper, they told me that on the front cover, there was this little picture of me sitting in my car with a car menorah. In one of the inserts on the front page, a huge picture of me lighting for the first time ever in the ShopRite, this huge menorah, massive center. This is where so many Jews would come and buy stuff for Hanukkah and for Shabbos. And on Tuesday afterwards, when we had our event in the Palisades Mall, and I was all excited, and they came to cover the event, but in the next day, it was on page 16, inside by the fold, where you can barely open up the newspaper, a little picture that they had that Chabad did, a can menorah. So what did I learn from this? I learned that Hashem runs the show, that I had this big plan, and I'm going to do this major event, and it was a successful event. but I'm not the one to decide how it's going to be Persume Nisa. One of the main points of Hanukkah is to have publicity of the miracle of Hanukkah. And Hashem will decide how the best way of publicity will be. That exact minute, 60 seconds that I decided to be in the office, that's when I got the phone call. It had nothing to do with what they wanted, because I had no event for Friday night for Hanukkah per se, and they came and did coverage of the and they did unbelievable Persume Nisa. And so I think the message is that as the Shluchim, the esteemed Shluchim, my colleagues mentioned earlier, that every person can be a Shliach. And if you put yourself in the Shliach mode, you will see that Hashem will guide you in the most revealed sense of the word. It's almost like you will see clearly how Hashem is paving the way for you. And that's really what I think we can all take away. We should all do our best to do the Rebbe's Shlichut, to care about every single Jew. And I just want to mention two things before we close the event. Number one, I want to mention, if I didn't mention this, I would be remiss, that we're at the last 3 or 4 hours of our annual fundraiser towards the end of the year's end fundraiser. And so if you have not yet gone on our website, please do so, JerusalemChabad.org/years end 2020. That would be greatly appreciated. And of course, one more point of Yud-Tet Kislev. Yud-Tet Kislev, since this year it's on Shabbos, we're going to do a special Zoom event this Motzai Shabbat, right after Shabbos. The event will be with a few rabbis saying short anecdotes about Chassidut. It's going to start from 8 until 10 p.m. From 8 till 9 p.m. it's going to be in Hebrew. And from 9 till 10 p.m. it's going to be in English. So the same information, this is our Zoom room, Facebook Live. It will be very, very entertaining. Even if you don't speak Hebrew, it will be a great ulpan for you. Or you can just log in at 9 o'clock. We look forward to seeing you. Yud-Tet Kislev. Thank you so much to our esteemed rabbis and shluchim, Rabbi Shaul Wilhelm, Rabbi Aryeh Safin, and Rabbi David Mesinter. Bezrat Hashem, you should have tremendous hatzlacha in your shlichus, and we look forward to seeing you tonight right here in Yerushalayim. Amen.